Now, the other big developing story, U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel has led to outrage globally. Muslim groups around the world are treating Trump's decision beyond a regional issue. They're rallying support behind the Palestinians.
Trump's Jerusalem decision has sparked a fresh wave of tensions on the ground. Over the weekend, a Palestinian man stabbed an Israeli security guard in Jerusalem. After Trump's announcement, the dispute is no longer limited to a region. The decision has sparked protests from Muslim communities around the world. In Indonesia, which has the largest Muslim population in the world, thousands of protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta to protest.
This shows Muslims around the world are united. The statement by the United States President has destroyed peace and has pushed the region into chaos again. Although the United States is a powerful nation, we would like to urge them to be careful of what they say, because Palestine is an independent, sovereign state.
Similar protests were also in Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka. About 2,000 protesters from a local group tried to pull down barriers and march to the U.S. Embassy in the city.
It is in the land of Muslims. It is the land of Palestinians. Jerusalem can never be the capital of Israel. We don't want to see the Jews in Jerusalem.
Amid the global condemnation, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to garner support for his country in Brussels.
Jerusalem is Israel's capital. No one can deny it. It doesn't obviate peace. It makes peace possible, because recognizing reality is the substance of peace. It's the foundation of peace.
But there is no change in European Union's stance. They continue to stand against Donald Trump's decision.
You know where the European Union stands. We believe that the only realistic solution to the conflict between Israel and Palestine is based on two states, with Jerusalem as the capital of both the State of Israel and the State of Palestine along the 67 line.
Trump's Jerusalem decision has alienated both the U.S. and Israel, at least publicly, while Trump administration insists it is trying a fresh approach to solve the dispute. Bureau Report, WION.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is touring Turkey and the Middle East today after dropping in on President Erdogan. The Russian head of state held talks with his ally, President Bashar al-Assad, in Syria. With Russian and Iranian assistance, the Syrian war against the Islamic State is over, as it is in Iraq. So what is the Russian president doing in the region now? Senior foreign editor Padma Rao takes a look at the shifting sands of big power politics across the Middle East on the heels of U.S. President Trump's official recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
The announcement was as predictable as the spate of reactions it unleashed around the world. Almost as if on cue, tens of thousands of Muslims and left-wingers took to the streets in protest, while heads of state cleared their throats on national broadcasts to announce their statutory reaction to what United States President Donald Trump had just announced: that Washington recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and that its embassy in Tel Aviv will move to the holy city where Israel maintains its own seat of government. The degree of outrage varied, but the condemnation was unanimous. Let's take a look at who said what on Jerusalem. President Vladimir Putin. Trump's declaration on Jerusalem defies common sense. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of Egypt. Do not complicate the situation in the region. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey. We will not abandon Jerusalem to child murderer, occupier Israel. And President Bashar al-Assad of Syria said the future of Jerusalem not determined by a president but by its history.
Yes, geopolitics is complicated. Let's try to break it down for you. We have a good panel. Stephen Lendman, former U.S. military officer and writer, joining us from Chicago. Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Mordechai Keder from Tel Aviv and Bianca Zanini, international affairs correspondent at I-24 News, with us from Jaffa in Israel. Good evening to all of you. Bianca, you're on the ground, you're looking at the developments. Take us through what Monday was like in Israel.
Right. Look, I think the big question here, or the big point to make here, is that U.S. President Donald Trump really decided to defy the warnings from the Arab world when he decided to go through with his decision on Jerusalem. Excuse me, I have to take this out because I can hear myself. Israel has been bracing for uprising. Israel has been bracing for clashes, for protests. We've heard Hamas calling for a third intifada, calling for people to go on the ground, but that so far has not really been consistent with what we've seen on the streets. Today we've had minor injuries, few injuries in Gaza, in Jerusalem. Been just one of the areas that we've seen a lot of protests and clashes, but it hasn't been as widespread. It hasn't been to the magnitude that some people have feared. In the city itself, it's been pretty localized. The biggest protests we saw were Friday and Saturday, mostly around Damascus Gate, also, of course, in Ramallah, in Nablus, in Hebron, and in Gaza. So this is something that we're seeing sporadically. Pockets of protests. We have seen injuries. We've seen some sort of an escalation yesterday, in the sense that there was this attack that your report mentioned on an Israeli security guard, a terrorist attack that was in direct response to Trump's decision. But so far, it hasn't been to the scale that many have worried.
And I'm quoting, Trump just followed Putin. That's a lot to say. Stephen Lenman, what is Vladimir Putin doing in the region then?
You could say he's taking a victory lap because Russian forces, together with Syrian forces and Hezbollah forces and Iranian help, smashed ISIS, defeated ISIS. And I must emphasize, U.S. supported ISIS. Documented evidence shows it overwhelmingly, along with other terrorist groups. So that's what he's doing there. He's working to solidify peace in the country, which is the toughest battle to wage. It won't be achieved easily because of the threat posed by America's presence, by still remaining terrorists, some in Syria, certainly in the region. So the conflict continues, but the war has been mainly won in Syria. Russia will bring home, Putin ordered most of Russian forces home from Syria, making a comment that if terrorists raise their ugly head again, they will be smashed harder and more ferociously than anything they've seen from Russia so far. That's what he's doing. He's a little more optimistic than I am. I think winning the battle in Syria, in Iraq, elsewhere in the region has a long way to go for one simple reason. America, Israel, and their partners don't want peace. They want war. That's their agenda. That's their imperial agenda. What they want is to impose dominance over the region, eliminating all sovereign independent countries, Syria, we've seen it in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Iran is on the list, maybe Russia and China are on the list, most likely.
Sure. Bianca, very quickly before I wrap this, I want to ask you, how does Israel see Vladimir Putin's visit and his role in this conflict?
Well, I just actually want to pull this back one second and ask the bigger question here, which I think for the people on the ground and for a lot of Israelis, the big question is, will this decision from Donald Trump, whether or not it is simply repeating a reality, will this bring us any closer to peace, or will it bring us further away? And right now what we've heard from the Palestinians is that the U.S. has lost its ability to be a mediator. It can no longer be in that role. And the big question is then, who will take over? Could Putin be interested in this? Is this something that we could see? I mean, we do know that Putin wants to expand his influence in the Middle East, let's put it like this. So this is an opportunity for him. Another thing is, though, that although right now we are seeing clashes. This is a big thing. A lot of analysts are saying this is mostly a symbolic move and that things will calm down in a few months from now. And then once the cooler heads prevail, we'll be able to talk about what's actually going to happen next.
Interesting times in the region. Thanks very much, Bianca, Stephen and Dr. Kheder for joining us this evening on Gravitas.